The last few years have definitely shaken things up on the movie front. First there was the pandemic, and then in 2023, just when things were seemingly getting back to normal on the production and box office front, the Writers and Actors Guilds went on strike for a good chunk of the year. Understandably, this resulted in some scheduling changes and delays, but don't worry, there's still new movies coming out. We're only getting one new MCU movie in 2024, though really, Marvel Studios probably needed a breather anyway. DC also will only see one new movie release, but that's more to do with James Gunn's rebooting of that cinematic universe. But hey, without superheroes hogging the limelight, that's making room for some other big reasons to head to your local theater and grab a seat. There's Dune Part 2, Godzilla x Kong, The New Empire, a new Planet of the Apes movie, the return of Furiosa without Mad Max, and then of course you've got some smaller, lesser-known stuff like Mickey 17, the new movie from Parasite director Bong Joon-ho. There's a Nosferatu remake from Robert Eggers, the guy behind The Witch and The Lighthouse, plus Jordan Peele has a mysterious new movie in the works and we know basically nothing about it. But there are a lot of other movies coming out that we do know something about, so without further ado, here are the biggest movies coming out in 2024.
Ladies and gentlemen!
As always, the new year starts off kind of slowly in terms of movie releases, but we will have the James Wan, Jason Blum haunted swimming pool flick, Night Swim, on January 5th. There's the musical version of Mean Girls, which is out on January 12th. And of course, there's Suicide Squad director David Ayer teaming up with Jason Statham to get revenge for the mom from The Cosby Show with The Beekeeper, even if that means, cutting a guy's fingers off and then doing this.
My fingers, he cut them off.
That's what you get for running a call center, man. In January, Disney is starting a 3-month campaign of releasing some Pixar movies in theaters that never got theatrical releases and just went straight to Disney Plus because of the pandemic. Soul hits on the 12th, followed by Turning Red on February 9th, and then Luca on March 22nd. On February 2nd, director Matthew Vaughn gives us Argylle, which features Henry Cavill as the titular super spy, who's actually just the cartoonish creation of Bryce Dallas Howard's novelist Ellie Conway. Vaughn knows a thing or two about spy movies, having directed a Kingsman or 3, and Argylle looks to follow suit as Conway encounters real spies like Sam Rockwell's Shaggy Assassin.
Here we go.
A week later, scripter Diablo Cody teams up with Zelda Williams for Lisa Frankenstein, which stars Quantumania's Catherine Newton. Speaking of Marvel, 2024 is going to be a light year for the official capital M, capital C, capital U MCU, but don't worry because Sony's Spider-Man universe, as the studio is calling it, is stepping in with 3 different Marvel-adjacent movies which may or may not, probably may not, feature actual Spider-Man. The first is Madam Web, and that's out on February 14th, Valentine's Day, ooh la la. Dakota Johnson stars as the psychic Cassandra Webb with Sydney Sweeney, Celeste O'Connor, and Isabella Merced all playing different Spider-Women. Will Madam Web break the Morbius curse and be, good? We'll find out.
I can see the future.
On February 23rd, Ethan Coen's comedy Drive Away Dolls pulls into theaters, and let the record state that I would so much rather talk about a new unknown project from one of the Coen brothers than a Madam Web movie, but most moviegoers seem more interested in an origin story for that weird old psychic lady in a spooky chair who used to bother Spider-Man every 10 minutes in the old Fox Kids cartoon.
This is one situation you cannot crawl away from.
Hey, speaking of weird old psychic ladies and spooky chairs, brush up on your Bene Gesserit etiquette because the Kwisatz Haderach returns on March 1st with Dune Part 2. Timothy Chalamet and Zendaya are back, along with most of the first film's cast, while newcomers Austin Butler, Florence Pugh, Christopher Walken, and Léa Seydoux will also be there to spice things up. The following week, the first of at least 2 Imaginary Friends movies in 2024 arrives with Imaginary, a Blumhouse horror about a teddy bear named Chauncey. Perhaps a little more kid-friendly is Kung Fu Panda 4 that same week, as Jack Black's Poe returns to face a new villain, the Chameleon, voiced by Viola Davis. Weirdly, this is the first of 2 movies this year that feature a character named the Chameleon. Craven is the other one. We'll get to that. Oscar-winning South Korean filmmaker Bong Joon-ho of Parasite fame goes Sci-Fi on March 29th, and he's taking Robert Pattinson with him for Mickey 17. Stephen Yeun, Naomi Ackie, Toni Collette, and Mark Ruffalo also star in the tale of an expendable, aka space traveler sent on a one-way mission to colonize an ice world called Niflheim. Sounds pretty cool. Speaking of pretty cool, Frozen Empire, the sequel to 2021's Ghostbusters Afterlife, arrives on March 29th. New York City is frozen by a force from beyond. Who are they gonna call? Or rather, who did they already call to be in the movie that they filmed? How about Paul Rudd, Carrie Coon, Finn Wolfhard, and McKenna Grace, plus Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Ernie Hudson, Annie Potts, and even William Atherton, all of whom are back from the 1984 original film. Another new empire headed our way is the confusingly titled Godzilla Cross Kong, which hits on April 12th, with two gigantic frenemies teaming up against a new giant threat together. I don't know if it's Godzilla Cross Kong or X Kong or just Godzilla Kong or Godzilla multiplied by Kong, whatever. It's the X that looks cool in titles. I'll allow it. Anyway, some humans will unfortunately be in the film as well, including Rebecca Hall, Brian Tyree Henry, and Dan Stevens, who hopefully know when it's time to shut up and get out of the way so the big monster fights can happen, because really that's what everyone is there to see. With all due respect to human beings, I would rather see a big reptile and a big primate beat the crap out of each other and wreck some buildings in the process. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Part 2 of Zack Snyder's magnum opus space opera Rebel Moon, subtitled The Scargiver, arrives on April 19th on Netflix. Rebel Moon came from a Star Wars pitch that Snyder had originally taken to Lucasfilm, and he has big cross-media plans for the concept. We'll see if those pan out. Sophia Boutella and Charlie Hunnam star in the story of a ruthless empire that must be defeated by a mysterious outsider. So many empires in the first half of this year, just a lot of them. Anyway, that same day, the classic Universal monsters are getting a redo from the Radio Silence Productions team, who also made Ready or Not and the recent Scream films. This will reportedly be a riff on 1936 Dracula's Daughter, which sounds intriguing and cool. On April 26th, Bones and All director Luca Guadagnino releases the sports drama / maybe thriller Challengers, starring Zendaya, and of course, former stuntman and John Wick / Deadpool 2 filmmaker David Leitch directs The Fall Guy with Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt, which is based on an 80s TV show about a stuntman. It's crazy, this title hasn't been used to death already, but the Screen Gems horror flick Horror Scope will be released on May 10th. Jacob Batalon stars, and another imaginary friend movie arrives a week later, simply titled If. The film stars Ryan Reynolds and Fiona Shaw, and the cast also includes a bunch of voice talent like Phoebe Waller-Bridge, Steve Carell, and Matt Damon handling all the imaginary characters. Kinda seems like a Drop Dead Fred type of movie, but with a big, huge CGI budget.
Hi.
The last time we met up with those damn dirty apes was in 2017's War for the Planet of the Apes, which effectively ended the story of Andy Serkis's character Caesar, but now the Maze Runner director Wes Ball will continue the saga with Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, which picks up generations after Caesar. Expect some monkey business as usual in theaters May 24th. That'll be a big weekend for tales of new societies forming out of the ruins of an apocalypse, as Charlize Theron's powerhouse character from Fury Road gets a prequel in George Miller's Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. Anya Taylor-Joy takes over the role, and Chris Hemsworth also appears, only ugly, as a warlord of the road called Dementus. I'm stoked. Anyway, that drops May 24th as well, and if ape fights and car wars sound too exhausting, you can also just catch a case of the Mondays in the Garfield movie instead, which is currently scheduled for that very same date. Chris Pratt stars, continuing his rampage of voicing beloved cartoon characters who nobody in their right mind actually thinks he sounds like. Lasagna Kingdom, here we come. John Wick's current status may be, shall we say, unclear, but his Whirl of Assassins continues with Ballerina, which is a spin-off / sidequel that takes place between John Wick Chapter 3 and 4. Ana de Armas stars as Rooney, who is seeking Wiccan-style revenge for the murder of her family. Did they kill her dog too? Because if not, does she really have a reason for revenge? I don't know. Family? How many people get there? That's gonna get dark. Let's just move on. On June 14th, Amy Poehler returns as Joy for Pixar's Inside Out 2, but Riley, the girl that Joy and her fellow emotions live inside of, is now a teenager, which means that the emotions are gonna have to make room for a new one, Anxiety, voiced by Maya Hawke.
Oh my gosh, I'm anxiety. Where can I put my stuff?
Also on the 14th, shit gets real once again when the untitled Bad Boys 4 reunites Will Smith and Martin Lawrence.
We're not just black, we're cops too. We'll pull ourselves over later.
Meanwhile, A Quiet Place Day 1 hits on June 28th, a prequel / spin-off to the John Krasinski and Emily Blunt horror series. The film stars Lupita Nyong'o and Joseph Quinn, who's no stranger to horrible shrieking monsters with expanding Venus flytrap heads. You might know him better as Stranger Things' Eddie Munson. Kevin Costner loves himself some epic westerns, and he is back with Horizon, an American Saga, Chapter 1, which arrives on June 28th, followed by Chapter 2 on August 16th. Costner directed, stars in, produced, and reportedly also financed the films himself. You know what they say, if you direct, produce, finance, and star in it, they will come. Despicable Me 4 kicks off the month of July on the 3rd with Steve Carell reportedly back as former supervillain Gru, and the Minions reportedly back as annoying little yellow things. The Minions, they're back, again, I think. Twisters, the 28 years late sequel to the Bill Paxton Helen Hunt disaster flick Twister, stars normal people's Daisy Edgar Jones. The Academy Award nominated Lee Isaac Chung directed the film, which is scheduled for July 19th. As far as tonal hard left turns for Oscar-nominated leads go, going from Minari to a Twister sequel is up there with Ang Lee going from Hulk to Brokeback Mountain. Hey, speaking of Marvel, because you can't go 2 minutes without doing exactly that while discussing movies in the 21st century, Marvel Studios has just one feature film coming out in 2024, and it is the third entry in a series that wasn't actually part of the MCU until now, the as-of-yet officially untitled Deadpool 3. Deadpool doesn't really play by regular universe rules anyway, and if anyone can help smooth over a merging of multiversal timelines in a self-aware meta way, it's a guy who breaks the fourth wall every 30 seconds. If the leaks from the set are to be believed, all manner of non-MCU Marvel characters could be showing up here. That includes Hugh Jackman's Wolverine for sure, who finally teams up with Ryan Reynolds' Wade Wilson for what will surely be some seriously stabby hijinks come July 26th, but more importantly, they finally got him wearing a yellow costume. I'm so excited about this. On August 9th, Hostel director Eli Roth brings the space western game Borderlands to the big screen with Cate Blanchett starring as Lilith, alongside Kevin Hart as Roland, Jamie Lee Curtis as Dr. Tannis, and Jack Black voicing the robot Claptrap. Roth did some clapping with his trap and told IGN back in November, "I didn't just want to film the game, we wanted to tell a great story on its own, but of course it's loaded with Easter eggs for the fans." Directed by Don't Breathe's Fede Alvarez, Alien Romulus is the 7th installment in the series, set between the first movie and the second, which actually gives the filmmaker a good amount of time to play around in. Don't forget, Ripley had been in cryogenic sleep for 57 years when Aliens opens. Not much else is known about the August 16th film at this point, but Priscilla's Kaylee Spaney will star. Will there be Space Marines and power loaders? God, I hope so. The second 2024 film from Sony's Marvel slate, Kraven the Hunter, is the latest attempt at turning a Spider-Man villain into an anti-hero. I don't know how they're going to do that. Kraven literally just hunts animals and sometimes people for sport, so really curious how they spin this one. Hitting on August 30th, the movie stars Aaron Taylor Johnson, who Marvel fans may know as the short-lived MCU version of Quicksilver. Will the Kraven film connect to Spider-Man in any meaningful way? Probably not, judging how Morbius and the Venom films have gone, but hey, we're curious nonetheless. Michael Keaton already came back as Batman, so why not as Beetlejuice? He's teaming up with original Beetlejuice and Batman director Tim Burton, which makes this at least intriguing enough to help offset the fact that it seems totally unnecessary. Wednesday's Jenna Ortega will also appear in Beetlejuice 2 alongside original cast members Winona Ryder and Catherine O'Hara. Willem Dafoe, Monica Bellucci, and Justin Theroux will also be hanging around with the Ghost with the Most when the film comes out on September 6th.
Beetlejuice.
Sarcastic, patronizing slow clap for whoever said they should call this movie Beetlejuice 2 rather than Beetlejuice, leaving the door open for a third movie
Beetlejuice.
that would be the magic words that summon the titular demon.
Beetlejuice.
Most sequels don't even use numbers anymore, but they were brave enough to go with the most obvious and creatively bankrupt naming convention imaginable. Beetlejuice 2.
It's showtime.
On September 13th, the animated Transformers 1 will tell the origin story of Chris Hemsworth's Optimus Prime and Brian Tyree Henry's Megatron, while Saw 11 will get everyone into the Jigsaw spirit on September 27th. See, these movies get a pass because Transformers 1 spells the number out, and it's not actually the first movie, it's a prequel, which is confusing, but still kind of cool. And then Saw 11 uses Roman numerals, and they're probably going to do some clever graphic design where the 11 is like, they write it with like hedge clippers and a knife or barbed wire or something. They're going to do something creepy on the poster with the number. I'll give it a pass. Hey, you want to know how to name a sequel? On October 4th, Joaquin Phoenix returns for Joker, Folie à Deux, which loosely translates to Shared Madness. Most people don't know that. Most people probably can't even pronounce it. I had to Google it myself. Lady Gaga co-stars playing Harley Quinn, though she'll presumably be giving a different interpretation of the character, kind of like how the first film's Arthur Fleck was a whole new Joker entirely. Also, this is apparently a musical, like a whole Busby Berkeley thing. I'm very curious. Why not? The first Joker was intended as a one-off, but it's funny how that can change after you bring in $1 billion worldwide and win a couple of Oscars, including Best Actor for Phoenix. Speaking of putting a smile on that face, 2022's horror movie Smile went from a planned streaming debut on Paramount Plus to a bona fide 200 million plus theatrical release, so you can bet your pearly whites that is getting a sequel coming October 18th. And that takes us to the return of Tom Hardy in Venom 3 on November 8th, which still doesn't have an official title. This is the third and final film of the year in the Sony/Marvel lineup that we know about currently, and it's also the one that has the best chance at success, since Venom works fine without Spider-Man around, Morbius didn't, and Kraven and Madam Web remain to be seen. This time around, Hardy is joined by Juno Temple and Chiwetel Ejiofor, and you can bet at least one of them is going to get some of that symbiote slime on them and cause a real mess. Also on the 8th, Rami Malek stars in the thriller The Amateur, and Paddington in Peru releases in the UK. That won't be out stateside until January 17th, 2025, which on a business level seems baffling since that would be a perfect holiday family film, and on a personal level, it's just so rude and inconsiderate it makes me want to give a hard stare at certain individuals working at Studio Canal. I'm somewhat seriously considering a family vacation to the UK just so I can see this movie opening weekend, and it's saying something. I'm just excited because there's a new Alien movie and a Deadpool and Wolverine team up, and I'm way more stoked to see what kind of antics that bear gets up to this time around. I love Paddington. I'm gonna weep openly in a crowded theater full of children, just sobbing. Just that I cried so hard in front of so many 8-year-olds when I saw Paddington 2.
Are you not entertained?
Would you like to be slightly less not entertained? Well, Gladiator 2 is out on November 22nd if you're interested in being entertained or not entertained, whichever. Ridley Scott's first Gladiator was such a big deal, and it ended so definitively and beautifully, and if you didn't want more, too bad, because Scott is back to direct, and the story focuses on Paul Mescal's Lucius, Connie Nielsen's son from the first film who's now an adult and presumably ready to do some gladiating, whatever it's called. Denzel Washington will also be there, and tragically, this is not based on Nick Cave's script for an unproduced Gladiator sequel, which had Maximus visiting the afterlife and culminated in a surreal sequence where he fought his way through various conflicts of history, from the Crusades all the way up through the Vietnam War, and then I guess it ended with him just sitting in the Pentagon at a desk. That's a real thing. Look it up. It's a real screenplay. It's bonkers. A week later, on the 27th, Wicked Part 1 arrives with a puff of red smoke based on the hit musical and starring Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande. On December 13th, Ralph Macchio and Jackie Chan will be teaming up with a new Karate Kid, and Sony says they're conducting a global search to find out who that will be. Clock's ticking, guys. You might want to get on that. Macchio, of course, is the OG, and Chan starred in the 2010 reboot of The Karate Kid, but conspicuous by its absence in the announcement of this movie was any mention of the gang from Cobra Kai, the TV show, which has kind of resurrected popularity of that franchise, especially William Zabka's Johnny Lawrence. Give us the high school karate rumble or we riot. Also on the 13th, the animated The Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim will be released, depicting a tale which reportedly takes place about 200 years before The Hobbit, and you can expect those riders of Rohan doing lots of literal horsing around, and that's no lion. You know what is a lion? Mufasa, Simba's dad. In the prequel, Mufasa the Lion King arrives on December 20th and comes from Oscar-winning Moonlight director Barry Jenkins, depicting the early lives of Mufasa and Scar, as voiced by Aaron Pierre and Kelvin Harrison Jr., and I'm dying to know what Scar's name was before he got the scar, or if they named him that because he always had the scar. I bet his real name is like Robert, or something very, very mundane like that. And he got a scar in his face, and he was like, "Call me Scar," and they were like, "Okay, Robert." More mid-90s cartoon animal rivalry arrives that same day with Sonic the Hedgehog 3, which sees Ben Schwartz returning to voice the character and probably eat some chili dogs. Presumably, Colleen O'Shaughnessy and Idris Elba will also be back as the Blue Blur's pals Tails and Knuckles, and Shadow the Hedgehog will also make his debut in the movie. Will they stay true to the source material and give Shadow a gun? Probably not. That sounds really weird. I don't think they're going to do that.
Been on my vision board for years.
Who doesn't love vampires on Christmas? On Christmas Day, director Robert Eggers is back. This is the madman behind The Witch, The Lighthouse, and most recently The Northman. And this time around, he's doing a remake of Nosferatu, F.W. Murnau's hit 1922 Dracula knockoff. This is actually the third time this is being remade. Werner Herzog did it in 1979, starring Klaus Kinski. This time around, though, we got Bill Skarsgård ditching his Pennywise makeup to play the vampire himself, and Nicholas Hoult, Lily Rose Depp, and Aaron Taylor Johnson are among the humans who are going to have to put up with his vampire nonsense. I'm very excited for this movie. I love Nosferatu. And finally, last but not least, we don't know anything about it, like literally nothing other than the fact that we want to see it, but Jordan Peele's fourth film as a feature director will be released on Christmas Day in 2024 as well. It's probably going to be scary, and based on Get Out and Us and Nope, it's probably going to have a very concise, vague title like, Huh, or Welp.
Yeah, nah.
Well, that about does it for our list of 2024 movies, but that is just the tip of the iceberg. This is a small selection. There's tons more stuff on the way. What films are you most looking forward to in the coming year? Share some recommendations in the comments below. To keep up with everything coming out among movies, games, other forms of entertainment, make sure you are following and subscribe to IGN wherever you like to watch. Happy New Year, everybody. Thanks for watching.